Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Derek Melinda. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. Hopefully everyone is doing well today. It is my birthday. 2024. September 24th, 2024. It was actually kind of strange. I had to fill out today's date, and I got, like, stuck. So I was like, wait a second. I put, like, 9/24, and then I was like, 24? Is there something wrong? And I had this, like, weird problem. Oh, my volume is low, huh? Interesting. All right, well, we'll give it a little bit more juice. No, my meters were showing a little low there, Ben. So I gave it a little bit more juice. Oh, you know what it was? Okay. I had a teledoc appointment on Monday. And my men's health doctor is remote. I got them during COVID. So I was doing this, and when I first got on, I was doing their audio volume testing, and they were like, "Oh, it's really loud." So I turned it down on my actual machine. Anyways, hello everybody, welcome. London says, "Happy birthday to the greatest community organizer." So Bob. I mean, again, at this point, the community is self-regulating. It's self-moderating. Folks like London and Ben are higher level in my own Discord than me. But I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you, London. And thank you, Sims. Thank you, Mike. Hello, Leonard. Well, thank you, Pathfinder PhD. I mean, it is definitely a nice relationship that we all have. I mean, obviously my patrons and people come out here and support the channel are very generous with their time and their finances. And again, I've said it before, I've said it again, as much as the donation of of capital to this little venture that we have been going on now for, we started in 20. Did we start in 2020? I think we did. Holy crap. 21, 22, 23. No, that can't be right. We started in 2020. I actually don't know. Anyways, point is, it's actually the time that people put in. It's the games that are run. It's the games that are being run, especially, that really make the community so incredible. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Lollipop. Happy birthday. Thank you, Casey. Thank you. Thank you. Happy birthday. Don't break your hip. Yeah, well, times are tough. John, thank you so much. Thanks for stopping by, John. Happy birthday. Thank you, Mind Blown. Thank you, Woodland. First video is 2020. Holy crap. Holy crap. That I thought it was 2020. I knew it was like the very end of the year, but man. So 2021, 2022, 2023. We're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of this channel. That's crazy. Oh, 2020. Just a year after Pathfinder 2's release with a young crew and hope gleaming in our eyes. Luke, how many candles? 42. Bones are very fragile. Right? I've never broke a bone. Knock on wood. Never broken a bone. I have torn my labrum in my right shoulder. I've had a near complete, not a complete tear, but a near complete tear of my ligaments in my knee. But I have never broken a bone. So far so good. That's awesome, Pathfinder. Appreciate it. So, anyways, I just wanted to hang out today. It's my birthday. I didn't want anything super stressful or prepping or anything like that. So I figured we could just hang out and shoot the shit and talk about role playing games and just talk about life in general. We got a tip. Someone needs to claim it.
Tipped $24. $24 for your birthday on the 24th of September 2024. Wish you many happy returns. Let's get Nighton going on a cruise ship.
All right, I think I know who that is then. Well, thank you. Go ahead and claim your tip if you mean to. But we of course have I was gonna say I thought clearly it was Mike. Mike has been we have several factions that are competing for the great Nighton Wars. One, of course, is something located here in the Midwest. But then there are two factions, one of which is pushing for Vegas and another which is pushing for a cruise. Now, to be very clear, I love Vegas and I love cruises, but I want to make it as accessible as possible. Now, of course, our patrons live all over the world. They live all over the country, so the mantra of let's just put it, in the Midwest near Cleveland. I mean, obviously that's convenient for us because it helps us set up, but it may not necessarily be the easiest place for people to get to. Yes, like someone like Sean is going to vote for Ohio because, we put it in Cleveland and we're 2 hours away, which is totally fantastic. Honestly, it probably is easier for a lot of our people to fly into somewhere like Vegas. The downside is we want to be able to scout the location. We want to be able to get there and prep it up, beforehand and make it a lot easier. And, it's just a little bit more convenient to be close to home and stuff like that when we're getting ready to sort of the ramp up, Yeah, the A's going into Vegas. That's going to be pretty big. It's going to be huge. I mean, it was a big deal when the Raiders went there, and our attractions will not only cater to the super rich. Yeah, we could have a coupon day or something. Gee, the lack of humility before RPGs that's being demonstrated here is staggering. Thank you, Patrick. Did I know I share my birthday with Fortnite? I did not. But in any case, thank you, Mike, for that. And again, I'm not opposed to a cruise in some world. I haven't been on a cruise. I didn't go on a cruise this year. My dad's health was kind of up in the air earlier this year. My mom didn't think it was a good idea to go. So we did not book one this year, but hopefully next year, fingers crossed. Granted, with everything that's been going on in my life, it probably would have been a disaster. So anyways, good stuff. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I worked for many years in insurance, in analytics. And at the time, I've always lived fairly frugally. And I was saving very aggressively all my money. And my goal when I turned 42 years old was I was going to quit my job. I was going to, if my house would have been paid off, basically sell most of my stuff, most of my material possessions, really minimalize. If I was in a bigger house, I was going to size down. And then I was going to go buy a boat, and I was going to go live in, sail the Caribbean, basically. I mean, maybe someday do some, blue water sailing across, but predominantly just live and sail in the Caribbean for like 6 to 8 months a year. And then, after hurricane season and the danger had passed, dock my boat somewhere in like Florida for the winter, come back home, see friends, see family, hang out for the holidays, see the fall, get some nice fun with the snow after then. And then, maybe after New Year's, when the snow starts to get in the cold, starts to get a little bit played out, tired, maybe do a trip somewhere. And then when I come home or come back, just go back to my boat in like the early spring and start sailing again. So that was my original plan. Like for many years, for like over a decade, maybe 15 years, that was the plan. And then obviously it did not, things kind of went sideways and for the better in many ways. This cases, who would have thought that this YouTube channel would be still here 4 years later, going on 4 years later. And, a lot of interesting and unique challenges, and I'm in a new job and stuff like that. So, but 42 has always been sort of this watershed moment that I had planned for so long in my life, to be this sort of divider between like, the old and the new. So now it's here, and I'm not really planning doing anything different. So it feels a little bit, not sad, but, and yes, to be clear, I completely arbitrarily picked that age, probably like age 28 or something, 27. I arbitrarily picked that age because 42 is the meaning to life, the universe, and everything, from Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and a book and series that I love. And it seemed like a good enough time for me. And, I'd done the math, and I said, oh, yeah, it's possible, Yeah, well, at that time, there was no audio equipment, KC. So, there is that. Mark says, YouTube is still here. Amazing, especially with the bad thumbnails and titles. Well, not so amazing. If we go over to YouTube and we take a look at our growth over these last couple of months, I mean, it's it's pretty down. Let's see here. We've got, come on, these things are always so horrible. Monthly. Oh, no, that's horrible. Why is this by that? There we go. Subscribers by... Yeah. Anyways, YouTube has terrible analytics. It's very difficult to figure it out. Anyways, long story short, we are significantly down in terms of our subscribers. Let's see. Earlier in the year, we were probably getting... somewhere around like 20 subscribers a day. And like the last couple of months has been like 0 to 2. So you're not wrong, Mark. These 4 years have been too short a time to game such excellent and admirable nights. I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. Well said. Thank you, Despicable. But it comes with the territory. I mean, these last couple of weeks, let's see what we did. We did a live stream on Chubos. We did a deep dive into Dark Sun, a campaign setting which has not existed since 1999. We looked at Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition, which, of course, dropped in 2018. We talked about information theory in RPGs. So, I can't really blame myself if the people aren't falling over themselves to watch this channel. But, we keep doing what we're doing because of folks like you all. So that's good enough for me. In fact, that's more than good enough for me. Well, thank you, Torin. Thank you for the support and good luck. That's the thing too, is, at this point we have, literally years of content, and it's many, a lot of long conversations. And it's interesting seeing that people who have been watching us for so long, or, gotten caught up and stuff like that, seeing how they have taken that information and sort of internalized it, and how they've made changes to their games, or in some cases, kind of gone and developed their own philosophy, their own idea of how games should be structured. And I think that's so important. Just release a controversial PF2 classes re-rank video and you'll get at least a dozen hate follows. It does happen. Yeah, I like the deep dives too as well. The problem that I have with the deep dives is that, hey, Lollipop, is that it does require kind of almost a working knowledge of the system
Lollipop
first.
Candy tip $26. Happy birthday. The real growth are the friends we made along the way. Now we win tip goals.
Well, I'm okay with that. That's a nice little, we winning tip goals. Tip goals are good. Well, Lollipop Candy, thank you. You've become the hype boss leader, and fill up our first tip goal. So thank you for that. And yes, not sarcastically, I've had an opportunity to hang out with a lot of patrons, whether it was here in Cleveland at our studio, or definitely at the conventions over the last couple of years. And it's been awesome. It's been amazing. And if I have one regret, it's simply that I don't get to play as many games with you all as you all get to play with each other. I wish I had more time to make, and that's a big priority for me, actually, is to get that opportunity. Not just for you all, but for me selfishly. There's a lot of games that I want to play, and I can't necessarily get to 4 or 5 games a week with my existing group. So I don't think I'll ever be able to get to 4 or 5 games as long as I'm streaming. But there's a lot of games I want to play and I want to try out, and I have this amazing community with these great players, and so it feels like it's like a match made in heaven. And I just need to find the time, and I need to get over my whole VTT aversion. Mark says Chubo was the absolute worst game I've ever seen. It has stuck with me in a weird way. It's almost like I don't know. It's like a virus. It piggybacked in, and the weird, strange words. It's like, now I understand how like sanity loss in Cthulhu works from reading text, right? Like, as you understand more, you become more crazed, if that makes any sense. We're here for you when you're ready to VTT. Yeah, I mean, what it really comes down to with me, my issue with the VTT is, I want a VTT that is both robust. I don't necessarily need it to automate anything. In fact, actually, I'm totally fine with it not automating everything. In fact, I wish some of the systems that have been designed for Foundry were less automation heavy. I don't need it to pre-process everything. I don't need it to do everything. But I do like them to be robust, but also give me a lot of flexibility and be able to change things and update things and make changes as I see fit. And, there are some simple light RPGs, but there's also simple light VTTs. But a lot of those simple light VTTs are really set up to play Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of games that require unique dice or unique, ways of tracking resources and stuff like that don't really function as well. And this is also something that this is a personal, I don't know if it's not a trust issue. I don't really care about trusting people. I like, for myself as the GM and for my players, potentially my other players, I like the ability to see other people's dice rolls, and I like to be able to see their character sheets. That's very, very useful for me. And so some of these ideas of like playing a game where it's like, oh, you know, people can just have their own character sheet at their house, or it could be a form fillable PDF. And then, you know, you can just use a simple Zoom call or whatever. I mean, that's fine in theory, but I really like being able to see their dice rolls, and I like being able to see their character sheets. Again, it's not a trust issue. It's just part of when I'm GMing, you know, I'm so hands-on, and it's so often that I will like look over someone's sheet and I'll be like, oh, well, this might be a great opportunity for you to use this ability or this skill. Like it just, I have this awareness of my players' characters that I find there's a barrier between me. Now, to be absolutely clear, when I play something like Pathfinder 2 on a VTT, you know, I can get everything. I can see it all. I've seen everything. I've seen it all. But that is an example of a system where there's, you know, a lot of automation and there's a lot of things. And, you know, somebody pointed out, you know, if you go to play Pathfinder 2, it's very easy to play Pathfinder 2. Now, it's also very easy to play proficiency without level, because that is an option that they have hard-coded into that system. And you can click a button, and now all the proficiency bonuses lose the level bonus. But what if you want proficiency with half level? So you had proficiency and you had half the character's level. Well, now that becomes a lot more difficult, and it becomes a lot more tedious to do. And so it's one of those things where if you play within the lines, or you play within the lines that somebody else kind of thought, oh, we should create an optional rule or system for this, they work really well. But when you start doing things out of, out of pocket, then it becomes, I think, in some cases, it feels like a burden. It feels like a hurdle. It feels like it's actually, slowing me down. So that's where it becomes kind of, tough. Yes, I got Incepted. Exactly. It's totally like Inception. Yeah, we all said you had a temporary bout of madness when you started using the voice changer. It just seemed like it was the perfect time. I had bought it a while ago, and I never got a chance to use it. And so this was the time was now. This was the opportunity to use it that I had been waiting for my whole life. Inception is a great movie. One of my, I pretty much love pretty much every Christopher Nolan movie I love. It's the terrain philosophy thing all over again. Sarak, what is the terrain philosophy? Maybe I need a refresh here. Yeah, shout out the Kickstarter Tome of World Building following from Unfurling for Toad. Yeah, so they're doing two new things, Tome of World Building and Nomicon, which is apparently a naming thing. I mean, I'll support Mythmere. Mythmere, I love the Tome of Adventure Design. I think it's fantastic. Hopefully they can keep the quality as high, and that'd be fantastic. But I've seen several advertisements for that, and definitely tracking on that. Yeah, automation and flexibility are often. I don't need the automation, to be very clear. That is something I definitely do not need. For me, it's more of like, if adding a value to a sheet or changing a value on a sheet with a computer should be no more or no harder than it would be to erase it with a pencil and write in a new value, or to, add something in the margins, or add something in other notes, or add something, right? The way that my characters do it. The other thing, and this is again a personal thing. If you've played in a lot of my campaigns, there's a lot of player aids that get assigned and attached to people's character sheets. By player aids, I mean a lot of times note cards. I mean a lot of stuff is kind of handed out in these kind of, tokens and trackers. For Forbidden Lands, we even experimented with 3D printing little trackers that people could use. So I'm really big into like little fidgety doodads at the game table. When we play, Legend of the Five Rings, I'm not saying that you couldn't. This is not necessarily something that you couldn't do, because of course you can do it. But when we play Legend of the Five Rings, right? I used black and white stones from my Go set, right? And we use those to track fatigue and strife with characters, right? So you gain fatigue, you gain strife. Instead of, you don't really lose hit points, you gain bad points. But, instead of just giving people a number and writing it on a character sheet, I would hand them these Go tokens. these kind of ceramic glass beads from Go. Is that super extra? Maybe. I don't know. It is. But, similarly, I played Legend of the Five Rings, the card game. And so I had cardboard circles, each of one, which represented what stance you were in: void stance, air stance, water, fire, earth. And, I had enough of them that I could give each player a set of them. And so when you changed your stance, you took one of these discs from your stack and you would like put it out in front of your character sheet so the whole table could very easily see what stance you're in. So I'm not saying that these things are impossible to do in a VTT. I'm just saying I have a very hands-on analog way of DMing. And sometimes I find that the VTT, kind of cuts me off. Sorry, my last chat was about voice changers. All right. 2 characters in an MMO and nobody knew for over a year they were the same person. I bet that would be awesome. And okay, you're talking about voice changers. Yeah, Jordy. I mean, I got the voice changers to help me do, online actual play. I could do some voices. I'm not saying like I can't do any voices. But it can get kind of grating and tiresome. And for me, and shout out and respect to professional voice actors. For me, it's consistency. Like I could do a great voice. Sometimes it'll sound out really great, but then like when we go back to that character later, it might sound completely different. So I'm very bad at consistency. And so I had this idea of if I could figure out a way to because like the voice mod app that I have is very easy interfaceable with like your Stream Deck. And then I could just have them as NPCs and I could just say, okay, I'm doing so and such. Let me just tag that NPC and give everybody the that experience. Because I like to ham it up a little bit in that regard. I mean, if you're going to role play, right, do it right. See, that's the funny thing, right? People assume I hate FBT. I don't. I just recognize it for what it is. It's FBT. And so, but when I do it, I lean in. I go all in on it. And if you've ever seen, on some of our actual plays on the show, but especially over the course of years, someone like Smith and I going back and forth, Bob, you would sit, Bob, I remember when Bob played like in our L5R campaign, he was just sitting there like wrapped with intention, like attention, like he was watching some sort of Shakespearean play, as my, and as the Lord, the samurai's Lord was, having this conversation with Smith's samurai. And he was just like, wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. So it's fun. I like to act. I did some theater in high school and stuff. I didn't really did anything after that. But I consider that a separate skill set from role-playing games. And I consider that a separate skill set from role-playing in specific. Yeah, I lose my voice in character all the time. Yeah, I definitely do as well. Yeah, voice mod, it's great for some things. It's not great for other things. I haven't tried out all the voice. They're always adding new voices and stuff like that. So, thank you, Jess. Derek's Ultimate VTT is a Discord video call where everyone has a dice camera plus a shared Google sheet for the maps and tokens. That actually probably is pretty accurate. I do love real dice, but Ben in chat is very famous for literally having a dice cam and rolling the dice, which I absolutely love. I agree. It's a little over the top and it's even too fiddly for me. But I think having even having a Discord bot that lets you roll dice inside of Discord, we use a bot in our Discord for our play-by-post, and it's specifically designed for play-by-post. We interviewed the gentleman on PaizoCon or no, was it? I can't remember what it was called. Third Party Con. Yeah, I think it was called 3PK. Something like that, third party con. But anyways, and that's great. That's fantastic. But yeah, having those sort of shared spaces, TPK con. Thank you. So I was close. I said, yeah, maybe I did say TPK, but TP con. Yes. Third party con. Anyways, Google Sheets plus Google Drawings plus RPG Sage. That's the name of the bot that I've been talking about, by the way, RPG Sage. plus Discord channels is play-by-post stream. And for the most part, that does mostly work for what I need and want out of an RPG, for the most part. So, I think I just need to, okay. Now we're going to enter something else, okay? Now, Jess says, to be honest, I set up a dice camera too. I love rolling real dice. I love rolling real dice too. I mean, I think it's amazing. The stupidest thing that I've ever seen that I was like, I totally get it. And if I was bigger into games, I would buy it. And I would like make everybody buy it, were those dice that they designed. I don't know if they ever came out. I don't know if it was vaporware, but it was those dice they designed. And who knows, they probably weren't balanced. But they were the Bluetooth dice where you could roll them in real life, like in your, and it would translate automatically to the game, or to the VTT or whatever you're doing. Like, those were so stupid, but I was like, that would work for me. That would do it for me. And in fact, what I really wanted them for was for when we were doing the actual plays in the studio. We were doing the live games, because I'm with Bob. Bob loves to see other people's dice rolls. And, it was a big deal, even when we designed our table that for the studio, that it would be designed in such a way that not just the audience, but the players could see people's dice rolls. And we tried, when we created our one table, we had 2 different dice trays on the left and the right side of the table, and we mounted cameras mounted at them. And at the time, we didn't have like the money and the technology to really get a clear enough picture. But I really wanted there to be a dice cam so that people at home could see us rolling dice. And I know that sounds so stupid, but like most things on this channel, it's really just about what I like. And I absolutely love seeing people roll dice. So the idea with those silly dice was that you do know what the dice are. Okay, awesome. You don't have no idea if they ever got made. But yeah, I thought it was a really great idea. But my idea was, okay, we'll get those dice, and then I'll buy them, make an expense for the channel and get 5 sets of them or whatever. And then everybody at the table can roll their dice, and at least we could figure out a way virtually for people at home to see what the dice roll was. I think it's brilliant. And here's the thing. While I do think it's silly and it goes over the top, I like Dice So Nice. Like, it is one of my favorite mods in Foundry, because it is done really well. So I just wish it rolled a little bit faster. I think it takes a little too long. And maybe it's just the nature of the beast, but it can create some like latency issues and lag issues. I don't like that. But other than that, it is a fantastic mod. Ben also thought that was a brilliant idea, but doesn't know if it happened. Anthony, thank you. VR headsets plus tabletop simulator plus anime virtual avatars. Now, that is an hereto unknown space, which I really want to explore. And I know that there are people who play D&D 5e on virtual or on TTS, on tabletop simulator. And I love tabletop simulator. In fact, I would rather play a board game on tabletop simulator than play that board game if it has some sort of actual like real game that has like an online multiplayer mode. Case in point, Root, okay, which I think Direwolf made. Root has an app that you can go on and you can play Root, and I play it on my phone or my iPad sometimes because it's fun. But they do have one on Steam that lets you multiplayer and you could play, and it's a video game. But I would rather, if I'm going to play Root online, I would rather play Root on tabletop simulator. I enjoy the physical aspects of like having to, pick up the card and flip it and turn it over. I think that is so important to me. So I've really been interested in exploring. I have never run an RPG session on tabletop simulator, and I'd love to know if anybody here in chat has ever run their RPG on tabletop simulator, because I think that would be awesome. And to be clear, this goes back to why when I was on Stephen Glicker's stream in the past, when we were talking about the new VTT the new, I guess it's a VTT, the new VTT from Wizards of the Coast, Project Sigil, why I was really obsessed, well, not obsessed, but I was really into it, because I said, these so-called virtual tabletops in Roll20 in Foundry look nothing to me like a virtual tabletop. That's not what my tabletop looks like. And so I was like, yeah, so TTS is fantastic. that's perfect for the type of gaming I want to do. Now, there might be some, there are some what I'll call mitigating factors, which is obviously when I play a paper RPG, players can take their character sheets home and they can work on them, and then they can bring them to the next session, right? Even in Foundry, to a certain degree, right, players can log in, or they might be able to update their sheets. That might be a lot trickier. So this is where I don't know how TTS integrates, but I know that when I've played TTS for board games, right, it doesn't really have memory as such. It's very kind of awkward, and being able to like save the state, I know you can do that, but people have to wait until the next time the game runs, which might not be a problem for certain games, but I just like the ability for players to be able to have their character sheets. In fact, that's a personal, I know we're going off on a huge tangent here, but that's what this whole thing is about. There are several signs for me as a game master that are really telling about a game and a player in a game. And that is, what do they do with their character sheet when the session is done? Like, some of them are like, do they own the core rule book, right? Like, did they go out? Did they buy the core rule book? Do they have a copy of the rules? If they do, that's like, it's like a +3 interest. But there are sometimes I have players, when the session is over, they take stewardship of their character sheet. They take it home. They put it into their book in the front cover. They close it, or whatever, what have you. Versus players who just basically just leave it on the table and assume, rightfully so, that I'm going to clean it up. I like that, for players to have interest in their character sheet. And I mean, it's almost impossible in today's crazy hectic world of super busy people and people with families and people like that. But, the most important and major sign for me of a game's success is how active are the players in my game when we're not playing the game. Are they talking about it? Are they thinking about it? Are they sending me questions? Are they asking me questions? Are they conversing with each other in a group chat, which I may or may not be a part of? Are they making plans? Are they debating course of if the game has enough bite and interest that people are thinking about it outside of that narrow window of time, that for me is a huge, huge sign that I'm doing something right. And that's tough to do these days. I will freely admit that. All right, Jess's dice camera is a small tabletop tripod with a phone holder and the OBS Android app. Interesting. I mean, cameras on these phones are fantastic. I think that'd be pretty good. Hoyrit says he backed that dice Kickstarter. They are finally shipping now. Well, better late than never. I'm really curious to see if these things work. Now, here's the difference. I am not as, the customization of dice is not as important to me as anything else. Everybody who knows me knows that you have 4 sets of dice. I like using casino dice for D6s because they're big. And then I mostly use the Chessex water speckled dice. Used to be called the water elemental dice, but I called them just because those were my first dice. But recently at Gen Con, I polled the group, which dice should I buy? And I bought like plain yellow and plain cream, like I have black and white and yellow dice. Like they are like with high visibility, black numbers, black on white, black on yellow, white on black, just like the most high visibility, because at a certain point for me, they just become a tool. Thanks, Frosty. Appreciate it. Mindblown says TTS is great for lots of games. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's an area that I need to explore. I'm very familiar with TTS for board games. I would like to explore it for role-playing games. There's the other downside, which is, to be clear, is not that much of a downside for me, is people go, oh, you have to pay money. It's like a one-time fee. It's like $20. It's always on sale. You can get it for like $10. And I get also, though, that some people say that, you can't run it on a phone. And maybe some people even have a hard time running it on their PC. So there are some downsides if you're trying to do like the most mass appeal that you can. Thank you, Rokos. I don't know about me being the king. I'm definitely the king of the losers, maybe. Stevengar hopping in. Thank you, Stevengar. Jackal has played Daggerheart on TTS. That's pretty sweet. And Thaddeus used it for their Twilight 2000. Awesome. Yeah, again, I like cards and I like tokens. And I agree. I think Daggerheart would be a great, being able to like have that pile of tokens and move one into, see the pile physically. I think it has a lot more impact than just seeing, some arbitrary number, I'll tell you this, Woodland Fellowship, it works a lot better on TTS than it would on Foundry. The Foundry's great. It is. I like it a lot better than Roll20. That being said, and I started with Roll20. That being said, they have just completely ignored card support again and again and again and again, as just because people are more and more obsessed with just, the minis and the maps and all this other stuff. I wish they had better card support on Foundry for sure. The only time I've ever done TTS is Descent 2 with me, which had 2 effects. I went out and bought Descent 2 and to get to fantasize about using TTS again. Yeah, well, that's awesome. Yeah, those were great games. Mike, I would, there's a lot of, I love board games. I love a lot of games. Role-playing games aren't the only ones, but I would love to play some more Descent with the patrons. That was a lot of fun. Gloomhaven TTS is great too. Now, Gloomhaven TTS, at least the version that I have, is also kind of an example of where, okay, fine, there are some things that you can do to even automate it a little bit, and I'm okay to that to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, it's automating things, but all it's really doing is just shuffling components. You can still just manually go in and change and do whatever you want, So going back to what I was saying, this is one of the reasons why I was really excited about Project Sigil. And Eric is saying that that they played in a campaign on Tailspire, which looks a lot like Project Sigil, but doesn't have the character sheet integration, but it does have bubbles for a few stats. And that's why ultimately I am kind of excited about Project Sigil. Now, I don't want it to be, the thing about it is I don't need it to be, nor do I want it to be, nor do I certainly do not want it to require this really overwrought, complex environment, right? Because that just sounds like that'll take a lot of time. A computer game, VT, should take less time than it would take in paper, not more. And I'm not willing to pay like the price on the GM side for setting something up like that. Just not. Oh, absolutely. The character sheet is sacred. You must care for the sheet. That's like, there's a lot of things that, like, when Bob first started playing with us, I remember, this is even before he started playing with like my home group. There were things that he did that were so anathema to me. And I remember like when he first started playing with us, and I remember Smith seeing him react the same way with disgust at some of the practices that Bob had. Like one was he'd make his character in, D&D Beyond, or he'd make his character on Path Builder, and he would print it out and he would bring it to the sheet. He'd bring it to the session. And then if a number changed, he would like cross it out in pen and he would write, the new value next to it. And then, that's stupid, you can't erase the pen. Well, that's fine. Next time, I'll just keep it till they level up, and then I'll get a new sheet. And like for us, the character sheet was a living document, right? The little notes scribbled in the corner, the ripped corner that you tore off in order to pass the GM a secret note, right? It was like a living, breathing document that sort of showed the history. And there was a lot of pride that went in having a character sheet that lasted for months or years, and there was almost this kind of, sometimes a character sheet would get too crazy and too bad, and there was almost this sort of like ceremonial, like, Viking funeral of like retiring the old sheet to bring in the new one. But you kept that old sheet because, again, that old sheet was like a fossil record of your campaign. Now, of course, nowadays, 5 session long campaigns and 10 session long campaigns are all in vogue. I espouse their virtues. People are all playing digital and virtual. There is just nothing. There's no sense of the tangible. There's no sense of the real. There's no sense of history with any of these things anymore. And it is an unfortunate shame. And I will say that, my house, almost burned down or whatever. It didn't actually almost burn down, but it was on fire and the fire department was coming. So who knows what the status could have been. I didn't know that it wasn't going to burn down. And I've thought about it, and outside of my dogs who I got out, the things that I would be the most sad about losing are some of these campaign and character, bundles of notes and memories, because those are the things that I can't replace. I could buy all these new books, all these books if I needed to, but I could never buy, these accumulations of people's character sheets and notes, and these hand-drawn maps and stuff like that. Like, these are the things that I just really value. Time for a safety deposit box. Yeah, maybe. Or like a fire safe. Although I've heard that those don't really work. I don't know. But yeah, maybe. Let's see here. I gave out, Frosty, you're in good company. I mean, you should see when Smith runs a campaign, he will present you with a character binder. I might even have, I don't know if it's back here, but I might even have one of my Smith character binders. I mean, it's pretty famous. Let me see if I can actually find it. It would be tough. It could be worth it though. But because I've shown it before. Hold on a second. All right. I found it. All right. We've shown this before, but when Smith, this was, I think, Smith's last Pathfinder 1 campaign. Smith ran 4 or 5 Pathfinder 1 campaigns. This was his last one. Okay. This is the campaign book. It is not just glued stitched. It is stitched binding. It is literally, it's like an RPG book. He made it. He got it printed professionally. It has a table of contents. I mean, this is the kind of, it's got, at the time it was Pathfinder, so obviously it was never printed for any, commercial use, but it has art and all the changes for all the classes and all the some of the lore of the campaign world and all the completely brand new subsystems, because of course there was, this combat with, you had your classes, notes from the game master. Well, it starts with a short story, the Lamentation of Alia. Then there's notes from the game master, a rules overview, classes, and then there's several pages for each classes documenting the changes. Then there's information on background, feats, a whole section on combat, which include initial reactions, CRs and encounter size, combat aspects, combat reactions, position, movement and melee, numerous combatants, NPC morale, iterative attacks, injuries, and then a subparagraph on voluntarily taking injury, mortal wounds, and the last stand rule. And then there's a whole section on magic, milestones, research, spell crafting, a downtime section, an adventuring session with stuff about wilderness exploration, building a base camp, adventures, towns, injuries. Very clearly, we were watching a lot of Torchbearer, or we were really into Torchbearer there. And then there is the legend system at the end, which lets you create aspects, use aspects, story arcs, world events, region events, session events, items, scars, gaining narrative control with a minor token, major token, and legendary token. Lastly, magic items. And then the final part is about the campaign world itself. So, I hold myself, when I make a campaign or I make something, I hold my manhood cheap because I play with, GMs like this. I also have a t-shirt, a hoodie with that logo, with the Legends logo on it. Anyways. Karama, thank you. Happy birthday. Thank you. Thank you. Just wrapped up another arena, and I have another one. I know, I saw that you're running 2 today, you crazy. After that, I will have my second free archetype. Maybe I should let other people catch up. I mean, Karama, look, I put the +1 permanent level out as a challenge to the game masters, because no one's going to get that playing, maybe. But if you're going to play and game master, you know what, buddy, that's what it's there for. That's what it's there for. Thank you for the support, and thank you for everything that you're doing for Southern Beaches. Karama, I mean, our GM council is working tirelessly and endlessly, but Karama, we'll have to get you on the GM council, because you are definitely a huge help to us there, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Not for me, but for all your fellow players. And there's a good 20, 25 to 30 active players in Southern Beaches, and a lot of them have been helped by you. So thank you so much for that. So thank you for the tip, but thank you even more for the work that you've put in. So thank you, Karama, for that super chat. Getting caught up here. Let's see. NG says, I've run OSR D&D and Tabletop Simulator, and it was a nightmare. Too many things can go wrong and make stuff fall into the void. The undo feature is a catastrophe. And I have had that problem in board games. So that is where I do get a little concerned. You know, I do get a little concerned. Dispel dice aren't dice. Dispel dice are art display pieces. They're very pretty, and they did a very nice job with them, but they are not practical in any sense. You know, it's like the difference between like a guitar that looks amazing, but it sounds like shit. It's more of a display piece than anything practical. Nobody does good card support anymore, just because that's not where the industry has been for a long time. If Derek is king of the losers, what does that? Well, no one bows and kowtows to me. So, you are your own people. You can make your own thing. Exactly, Ben. He's not my king, so I don't care. Exactly. That is the correct answer and the correct attitude. So yeah, I have seen the thing with the Hero Forge mini. I think that's pretty cool. And again, I'm less concerned about like making a, battle mat with arena minis and dungeon terrain. I really just want to be able to like physically hand people doodads, to be able to like show and represent things through tokens and through, physical objects, even if they're virtual physical objects. Absolutely. That is correct. Magic tape is a character sheet's best friend. I mean, this is an example of like things that were passed down from the ages. When I first started playing D&D, I was playing the basic D&D, the black box. And then when I got indoctrinated into my cousin and uncle's campaign, I went there and I saw they all had Scotch tape, magic tape, the flat tape, the matte tape, and they had put it over the wounds box on their AD&D character sheets. For those of you who don't know what this looks like, because not everybody does. Well, this is a second edition, but this will work. So the window capture, yeah, there it is. So the character sheet had this section here where you had this big section for wounds. So you had your max hit points, and then you would, track your hit points in this box here on the right. And same thing with these check boxes for ammunition. Right, you would write in like arrows, and then you would check the boxes, how many arrows you had, and as you shot each arrow, right, you would erase one of the boxes. But you might also have quarrels, or you might have sling stones, right? So there's a couple different places where you had these things, and it used to become, it used to become the thing that you'd get a new character sheet, and the first thing that you would do is you would take Scotch tape, and you would put tape over the wounds box. You would put tape over those check boxes because it made it so, because if you didn't, you would erase and rewrite and erase and rewrite and erase and rewrite so many times in those spaces, you would actually wear through the paper. And we didn't want to wear through the paper. So, so you put tape down in order to preserve it. It was like a protective covering. It was awesome. I loved it. I still love it to this day. I want to play AD&D second edition just so I could do that. Like the sense of nostalgia there is so real for me. It's crazy. Anyways, London says, I had friends who rewrote their sheets in pen at every level up, and I just can't abide that. I'm sorry. It's just totally, that is just totally not my spiel. I love the physical book that designed and made to last, Trajan, giving me some more feedback. Ran Star Wars on TTS. It's a lot of prep to get a decent looking table. There are great mods for RPGs, but roughly half are broken, or at least TTS goes haywire when I try to implement them. Lance giving me a heads up that there's a tornado warning. Alrighty. Let's see what we got here. I know there's a hurricane warning. No, it doesn't look like. It's not even supposed to rain where I am. So I think we'll be all right. Um, Jess says, I once made a website for my players that went into all the world detail, which classes and archetypes, BF1, were appropriate, all the player races and how they were different. Then in session 1, the Harmonian pulled up, Planescape alert, showed up, and I pulled off my mask and revealed I created this entire detailed prime material world to hide my Planescape game inside. It was a Trojan horse. Yeah, they thought they were getting one game, but they got a Planescape game instead. See, I can't do that. That's too much. That's too much work. Boy, thank you for the happy birthday. Howdy, Trey. Thank you, Heavy Metal Mystic. Thank you, Trey. Thanks for stopping in. Leonard, thank you for stopping by. Take care. Thank you, Thunder Mammoth. I appreciate this. I like imagining this in. You see, you put the tape on the character sheet, and that's what you need in order to keep it strong. You see, back in my day, we didn't. New copies cost a nickel. London, that cost a whole nickel. And we didn't have that kind of money, so we had to make do, and we put Scotch tape on. Keep it together. Back then, people knew how to make things that last. Thank you, William. Anyways, so old man voice mod. Well, no, that was just me doing old man voice. No voice mod. Well, Ben, thank you. Thank you for stopping by, and I'm glad you learned a lot. I appreciate it. Appreciate you learning a lot. So somebody had asked a question way up here. I was just trying to get through all of it. We finally got caught up. So again, if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, we're just here to hang out and talk. Somebody asked, what are my 5 RPGs that I am most interested in playing? I'm trying to find it here. Thank you, Kyle. Here we go. Pathfinder PhD wanted to give a list top 5 games you would like to play. Okay, and top 5 games you want to GM. Ooh, that's a great question. All right, top 5 games that I would want to play. Yes, it was you. Mark says the old man. I must be getting old. Yeah, it's easy to do the old man voice when you, your foul self, are an old man. I think near the top of my list is Fabula Ultima. So I think there. Let me preface this by saying there's a lot of games that I want to play, or I want to run, I should say, because I have a deep and abiding love for the game's, either the game's premise, the game's maybe like the setting, right? Or I have a deep and abiding love for the game's mechanics and how they work and how they do what they do. And in those cases, those are the games I want to run because I want to make sure, quote, that it's done right in a certain sense. So, I don't want to leave it up to somebody else. So like, let's say, for example, I really like Dune. I don't want to play in Dune. I want to run Dune because generally speaking, I probably have, for the most part, a better working understanding of the world of Dune than maybe a lot of people. And getting to share that with people and getting to show people why Dune is such a cool setting and getting to show them how this 2D20 system operates, I think is really enjoyable for me. So there's an educational component to that. That being said, there are games that I think other people may be better suited to run because they have a deeper working knowledge of that space and or because those games give me as a player a lot more freedom and narrative control. So like number one game that I want to play is Fabula Ultima, just because I think that is a great game system where people who have a much better knowledge of Final Fantasy, JRPGs than me will be able to contribute that kind of thing. Hey, GM Scott, thank you very much.
$50. I just popped in to say happy birthmas, Derek. Grab yourself a shiny new off to run my Tuesday game. I'll catch the VOD later. Bye.
Well, thank you, GM Scott. I very much appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by, and I appreciate the generous tip. And I hope you enjoy your game. Thank you for wishing me happy birthday, and thank you a lot, buddy. I love having you here and being part of the community. I look forward to the next time we can share a drink together or play a board game or even an RPG. Hopefully, either at Origins next year or maybe at NightCon or who knows. Still not sure if I'm going to go to PAX U. Several people want me to go to PAX U. Yes. Or ideally, GM Scott, yes, all of the above would be amazing. So GM Scott thanks to GM Scott, I was able to play ARCs at Gen Con, and it was like one of the highlights for me of the game, of the convention. And it was a lot of fun. So thank you, GM Scott. Thank you, Gonzo, for the forever lurker. Well, thank you so much. Have I gotten a chance to look at the Cosmere Stormlight RPG? No, but my interest is higher because I discovered that Max Brook, who was basically the lead designer of the Legend of the Five Rings 5th edition game, which I like a lot, is either one of the designers, one of the lead designs, one of the design team members for the Cosmere Stormlight RPG. I think that's a good designer, someone I respect and appreciate. And, it's probably worth taking a look, but no, I have not really been focusing. I didn't kickstart it. If it's still being kickstarted, I'm probably done. I did not choose to kickstart it. It was really expensive. And I just I don't know the world and the lore. So that's one of those situations where I'm not as interested in the lore or the world. And so the game loses a little bit of interest for me there. Rooms are going fast for PAX U. I mean, if I go, Ben, it's going to be like last minute Hail Mary, crash with somebody else or something like that. GM Scott, that poor non-KLC player of ARCs. Derek laid into him hard and he only got a few points. I mean, look, don't fudge the dice. Take no prisoners. You show up to game, okay, you're going to get a game. So yeah, I destroyed this. GM Scott and I were going to play. ARCs is a 2 to 4 player game. We're going to play GM Scott and I. Stephen Glicker really wanted to play, but there was someone famous he had to go hang out with. So he didn't show up. And so this random guy saw us setting up and he was like, oh my God, all I've wanted to do at Gen Con is play ARCs and everything's full and, stacked up. I couldn't get in a game. Can you teach us? Can you play it? And we were like, yeah, join us. And I just annihilated this guy. I just destroyed him. It was not even close. Trajan, thoughts on me, myself, and Die/Trevor's Broken Empires RPG. For starters, I got to meet Trevor at Gen Con. I got to hang out with him. We got dinner once or twice. Seemed like a really nice guy. Pretty awesome. I had no interest in the Broken Empires RPG, but he made some videos that I happened to watch this week, and he is saying some things that I like. I don't know. Now, again, I don't know him and I haven't watched all his videos, but from my general sense, it seems like he really likes D100 systems. He really likes the One Ring from Cubicle 7. And he really likes the Perilous Wilds book supplement from Lambstone and Black. And it seems like he's taking those three ideas or concepts and really going to town with them in his game system, which is fine. He definitely has this sort of, like, I hear him talk about stuff like his quote unquote social combat system. And I like social combat systems. I mean, if you're going to create mechanics for it, then it should be engaging in that respect. But then he talks about like checking to see if your wounds fester. I don't care about my wounds festering, not in any sort of reasonable simulation sense. So he says it's a sim-like game, but then he's talking about like making checks to see if your wounds fester. And that's where I start to go like, I don't 100% know what a game like that is trying to do. Like, because that creates a very strong tone of the game. It creates this very non-heroic, non-human like experience. And that might be what he's going for. I just don't necessarily know if that's what I'm really interested in. So yeah, we'll see. But I'm interested. I mean, he said some things that I really liked, things that I really agree with. I mean, a lot of the things that he talked about with the social combat system are part of the reason why I love. I mean, I think he even calls them intrigues, which is what Legend of the Five Rings calls them. And one of the reasons I love them is because it creates a mechanical framework. I've talked about this before, but maybe we'll whiteboard it out. but there's a mechanical framework for social combat. The biggest problem with everything in RPGs that isn't a fight is that when it relies on mechanics and dice rolls, it just usually becomes, well, keep rolling dice until you succeed enough times. And that's really boring, right? What you want is for you to essentially, like in combat, the reason why combat isn't boring, I mean, it could be boring, but the reason why combat isn't boring is because in theory, you have different tactics that you could be using. You could be targeting one opponent. You could be moving to a flank, or even if you're playing complete theater of the mind and you're not playing with a grid-based game, right? Like you could get two of your big warriors, squared up into the doorway and, have your missile, with spears and shields out, and the GM's like, oh yeah, they can't get through. And so then your magic users and missile, wielders are raining down death from behind, right? It's that's very interesting. You're making a lot of choices, and those choices have a mechanical consequence, and that's what makes them so interesting. That's what makes them so fun. And I think a lot of these systems suffer because they're not interesting and they're not fun enough. Ben, I don't know if you saw this video. He kind of specifically called out Duel of Wits by saying that it's a gamified version of a conversation, of a duel. I think he even calls it a duel, his system. But he mentions about how what he doesn't like about the Duel of Wits is the scripting. And I will admit, Ben, the thing that I do not like about Torchbearer, Mouse Guard, Burning Wheel, the conflict system, the core conflict system, is the scripting of the paper, rock, scissors, and the pre-scripting of it, because it can sometimes feel like a weird shell game, right? And I've played it Mouse Guard, I've played it in Torchbearer, and it's never clicked for me. It's like the one thing that's really holding me back from wanting to like really run Mouse Guard or Torchbearer, or even really get truly deep into Burning Wheel, is the scripting of the 3 volley, right? Or what do they call them? I don't know if they call them in Torchbearer or in Mouse Guard, but I think in Duel of Wits or they call them a volley or something like that. Jim Scott says he is 100%, meaning Trevor from Me, Myself, and I, 100% going for non-heroic. Okay. Cosmere RPG will be available. They plan to expand the game. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I mean, sometimes these generic systems take off, sometimes they do not. But I think Max is the lead and love what he said on a few interviews. Well, maybe I have to go check those out. Again, I don't really know much about the Cosmere RPG. I thought a lot of people were like, oh, it's just a 5e clone. And so I was kind of like, oh. Not because I don't like 5e, but because I already own 5e. So I didn't know, and then, or if there are specific mechanics in there that are designed to specifically replicate things from the Cosmere verse or from the Stormlight archives or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Thanks, Jim Scott. Yeah, and I kind of agree with that to a certain extent. I don't know exactly how the specific rules for Duel of Wits work in Burning Wheel, but like in Mouse Guard, you can attack, you can defend, you can feint, and then there's technically maneuver, but really it's attack, defend, and feint. And basically, feint beats defend, defend beats attack, and attack beats feint. Right? So it's a paper, rock, and scissors. And what you do is for your entire side, the individual PCs don't get to take answers. The players in secret, the GM in secret, lock in, their first action, their second action, and their third action for that combat exchange. And so you might, as a group, go, we're going to attack, feint, because the GM had already locked his in. And then now if the GM went, feint, defend, you're going to wreck them. But if the GM did the other way, if they went defend, attack, you're fucked. But you're not really basing it on anything. It's just kind of like, it's like a paper, rock, and scissors tournament, So, I mean, maybe there's some more strategy to it than meets the eye, but I haven't really loved it. It's not my favorite thing in the world. Sorry. Leland says, talking about the Cosmere RPG, combination of good parts of various D20 games. I think the different settings will have different magic systems. Everyone's always like, hey, Brandis Anderson and his magic systems. Okay. They eat metal. I don't know. Doesn't do it for me. Matt says Burning Wheel for the win. GM Scott says Cosmere looks like it did some very interesting things, but like Derek, I don't know much about the universe, so I didn't back it. I figure I can always get the book later if I want. Yep, that's kind of where I'm at as well. And there's nothing super special and important to me that I really want to get my hands on as well. What is up, Vin? Welcome to the stream. I was about to say they eat metal. I love those Mistborn metal. That's an interesting part. Yeah, they don't need the funding. They've got it. I like mechanical systems that lead to story moments. And there was something that we said on the Discord the other day where I was saying that you all like playing games, or you all like playing games about creating a world, and I like playing games that create a story. And so some of these simulationist type RPGs have been missing me a lot lately because they are more interested in accurately portraying and duplicating or emulating or giving the feel and vibe of a world. And that isn't necessarily the same thing as a good story. And of course, obviously the mistake is to say, oh, well, to have a good story, you have to have a pre-written plot. No, that is not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply saying that I want my games to be exciting. I want my games to be filled with some of the character moments and tropes and story beats that have dominated storytelling for the last, 5,000 years. And so, if it was good enough for every society and civilization in human history, then it's probably good enough for me. But again, there's this subsection of people, and I will admit that, this is not me, who really like playing RPGs because they don't care about the story. They want to live in this fantasy world, right? They want to be this fantasy character. And for me, this whole idea of embodying a character and sort of getting to walk a mile in their shoes doesn't really matter to me. This is the same reason, by the way, why I see that some people, in fact, I would say a lot of people, are very adverse to the idea of troop style play, right? Where you play a variety of characters. Ars Magica, right? You have your magus, but you also have your companion, and you have your whatever they're called. They're not called mooks, but your grudges or something. Grogs. I think they're called grogs. And I've seen a lot of people be really excited about this game, and then they lose interest immediately once I describe something, and that is looking for it. Can't find it. Where the hell is it? Too many games. It is. Oh, there it is. Whatever. Band of Blades. So Band of Blades is. Thanks, GM Scott. Appreciate it. Band of Blades is this, Blades in the Dark, but you're in this, kind of fantasy dark war, and you have two sets of characters. You have the characters that are like the leaders and the generals of the army, and they make these big strategic decisions. Think of it like the downtime action stuff. And each player plays as one of these people, but they don't go on the missions. When you go on the missions, you send, your soldiers, and those soldiers it's just a pool of characters. So, the grim dark sergeant, Sergeant Haskins, that's not my character. That's not your character. You might play Sergeant Haskins in one mission, and then I would play Sergeant Haskins in a different mission. I mean, it may be the case that people naturally gravitate towards one character, but it also might be the case where you go, well, this is an infiltration mission, and we don't need Sergeant Haskins, so we're not bringing, we didn't assign Sergeant Haskins to this mission. Take care, GM Scott. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for the tip. So, but a lot of people see that and they go, I lost all my interest, because they want their character. They want one character, and they want to live in the world embodied through that singular avatar, and they want to experience this fantasy world through the lens and through the eyes of this singular character. And that is just not an interesting thing for me in RPGs, right? So into that end, this a lot of the aspect of simulationism is, I think, very much tied to this idea of wanting to create a realistic, and by realistic, I don't necessarily mean like our world, but a realistic, internally consistent fantasy world, because that way the verisimilitude remains very high, and it doesn't ruin the suspension of disbelief. It doesn't ruin the immersion. And I think for a lot of players and a lot of people who play RPGs, it's really all about the immersion. And for me, it's not. In fact, some things which we've gotten comments on, some people love, some people hate. When we play an RPG system, we will frequently talk about the mechanics, like in the game system, because we are interested in the game and the process and the procedure of the game, and how the game is creating these unique opportunities, these unique outcomes, these unique situations, and really, appreciating how the game is helping us to create a story. Whereas I'm not necessarily as interested in saying, here's a really interesting world, and we went and we did nothing in it. It was boring. It was tedious. It was drudgery, but it was very realistic, right? It was very internally consistent. My character got a scratch, and then we walked through the swamp for a few days, and we made about 10,000 rolls, and then that scratch got infected, and then my character lost his leg, and that is what I signed up for. Okay. But that's not what I signed up for. Maybe if I had all the time in the world to play these games, I could do that now, but the juice to squeeze ratio needs to be pretty high. I don't even give, people are like, oh, you got to watch this TV show. Don't worry. The first 2 seasons, they're just getting their feet wet, but it really gets good in the 3rd season. No, I don't think it makes it interesting though, Matt, but it does give me a lot more patience to go through that procedure, right? Because here's the thing that I ultimately believe, and I know that this is true because I used to be the other way. My idea was, if I simulate an interesting world, then we might end up with an interesting story when all is said and done. And that is fundamentally a fine premise. But I feel like you're just taking the long way around, because you're still trying to get to the same outcome, which is an interesting story. And rather than attacking it directly, you do this misdirect. You do this redirect, because it somehow, I don't know, somehow it makes you feel better, somehow assuages your guilt or something like that. It somehow makes it feel more real or lived in. Maybe. But it's interesting because I see the way that people will do these mental gymnastics, and they will, bend over backwards to create these simulationist concepts. But what they're really doing is actually trying to get to an interesting story and an interesting outcome. They just refuse to do it. So they have to bend over backwards to create all these crazy mechanics and tables just so that they can get some interesting stuff to happen, in the hopes that it generates a interesting, fun, exciting outcome. And taking the realization, taking the risk, that there is a good chance, not 10%, 20%, 30%, that it's possible that no matter what you do, as long as you don't start fudging. Because if you start fudging, if you're playing a simulationist game and you fudge, then what the fuck are you even doing, right? Like that's just crazy. In fact, what you're saying here to me is nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. What you call shortcut, I call rigging the deck. No, if you're rigging the deck, then what the fuck are we even doing here? Just create the experience that you want to create. And so, you accept, though, that if you're not rigging the deck, like if you truly just have these random procedural outcomes, that you accept the fact that your session could suck, the story could be boring. It could be a very dull, uninteresting, nothing it really happens type session. And again, once upon a time, I was okay with that. I was okay with having, I don't know, 3 or 4 sessions of really nothing boring or nothing interesting happen because the random tables didn't generate enough interesting things. And then, oh, finally we get something interesting. And then after 5 sessions, we finally have a really good one. Cool. And that could feel really earned, you know? Crocodile, literally saying what I'm saying. You know, a lot of the narrative systems, not all of them, but don't feel like they earned the interesting outcomes because they're so abstracted, earning the outcome. And I get it, right? Something worked for feels, maybe it feels a little bit better than something that just is given, right? Here's the problem though. And it comes down to like this video game idea, which is like, should you earn the skill or should you be given the skill? And, you know, part of my problem is it's fine to say that a player needs to earn the skill to be good at the game in order to experience it and get to enjoy it. But what if you don't have the time, you know? What if you don't want to get good? What if you don't want to put in the time that it takes in order to have an interesting moment? So, you know, I'm fine saying that you need to earn it, but I'm not fine is saying that, I'm not fine saying that I'm willing to put in that time. I'm not willing to put in that investment. Whereas I can guarantee you that if we sat down to play Avatar Legends role-playing game, the very first session is going to be this like banger. And the second session is going to be also intense. And you're going to be like, wow, so much stuff happened that session. So many things with my character, so many things with the story, so many things with the villain. And I didn't see any of that coming. And it's like, neither did I. We discovered it and we created it together. And it's like, wow. And it's like every episode is just good, 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 good. To me, that's worth the price of admission. It's worth the price of admission. Erica, thank you.
Erica tipped $43. Happy birthday. 1 for each year and 1 for good luck. I'm not in stream but wanted to say I know it's not the Caribbean, but instead you're shipwrecked on RPGR with the lot of us. Hope you're having a good one.
Thank you, Erica. And apparently you're not on the stream, so you don't hear this, but if you do catch the VOD, thank you so much for that. Erica, I had a lot of fun playing games with you this summer, and maybe I'll be in Philly this winter and we can play some more games. Thank you, Erica. That's very nice. Let's see. Tracy says, in contrast, you're interested in TTS, which creates a virtual table where you and your friends can play in reality. So you want the game to be simulated, not the narrative. That's actually true. Yes. I want the game to be simulated, not the narrative. That's a good point. Self-confessed, I feel like I'd probably hate Avatar. I think you would. I'll give you another example. A lot of people struggle with playbooks, and Avatar in particular is very focused that a playbook is about an experience, and it's about giving you mechanics to undergo this kind of, it's not the outcome. Outcome is not guaranteed, but when you pick a, when you pick a playbook like the Icon or something like that, you know that your story is going to be about choosing between your role, as the, the responsibility that you have as the Icon of being this sort of, the legendary savior sent to save us, versus, your own personal freedom and what you want, and having to choose between the two of those. Now, to me, and then you have all these mechanics that are designed to support that exact play style. That's great to me, because I don't want to have to wander aimlessly trying to figure out what it is that this character is about, what this arc is about. I'm okay with that arc being sort of, kind of written in. The only difference is what is it going to be the outcome, and how are we going to change it, and what's going to be crazy, and what's going to make difference? Why are the choices made? Not necessarily what are the choices made. Because freedom is great, but freedom can also very quickly lead you to getting lost, right? And wandering around aimlessly. And I feel like that has happened to a lot of my games over the years, to be honest with you, where in theory it's like, oh, I've got this fully realized world, or I've got a ton of procedural tables and so many cool stuff is going to happen. but it never really does. It just kind of ends up getting stuck in a morass of just kind of like proceduralism, just like endless proceduralism, hoping, waiting for something interesting to happen. And, you know, I in my old age, I'm like, I just don't have the time for that anymore, you know? Every session being a 7 out of 10, 7 or higher out of 10 sounds like snake oil to me. Well, yeah, but I'm not saying that every session is guaranteed to fall flat or guaranteed to be a banger. But, you know, and we've talked about this before, Vin. We've talked about before about like, is in order to have truly great sessions, 10 out of 10s, you know, do you have to be willing to have a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 session? And I think the answer truly is yes. If you want a 10 out of 10 session, then you have to be playing in a system where that 10 out of 10 session is a rarity. And if that 10 out of 10 session is a rarity, then your session could end up being a 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10. But what I've discovered in my maybe older age is I am perfectly okay with 7s and 8s and maybe even the occasional 9. And, you know, I don't need a 10 if it means I have to put up with 1s and 2s, because sometimes with certain campaigns and certain groups, I might only be playing once a month. And if that one session for the month is a 1 or a 2, if we get 2 sessions in a row that are like misses, I might lose players. I might lose interest. The whole campaign might grind to a halt, you know? And so for me, it's a safety procedure as well. I'd rather have the game be guaranteed to be a certain level of interest rather than hope and pray that the dice bless us with an interesting session. Let's see here. Travis says, my MMO friends literally call the game doing chores so they can grind and earn the skills to be good at the game. I have real chores, so I don't want to do that in my leisure time. And Travis, yes, and there was a time and a place where I used to play, you know, first-person shooter games online. And I used to play real-time strategy games back when that was still a thing online. And I grew up playing Quake and Team Fortress against, you know, online players, ladder play. I used to play StarCraft, ladder play, StarCraft 2, ladder play. And I would play a lot and I would get good and people would be better than me and I needed to practice and I needed to be good. That is not me anymore. You know, that used to be me with Magic the Gathering. Now the idea of going to a Magic the Gathering tournament has no interest to me because I'm not putting in the work. I'm not putting in the sweat equity. And so the barrier of entry is too high for me. Let's see here. Self-confessed says, to be honest, I don't really play into this argument in general. I run fun games and my players have fun. How? I just skip boring stuff and focus on the stuff we're there for. That is good GMing for sure. But you know, I would argue though that what you're doing though is you are imposing narrative control over the proceduralism and simulationism of your game so that you can, quote, like you said, skip stuff and get to the stuff you're there for. So thank you for, I don't know, more like old man crotchety complaining. And to be clear, I think GMs are very valuable, and I don't necessarily say that the game should necessarily be on autopilot. By God, by any stretch of the imagination, PBTA is by no means a GM autopilot game. You know, the GM is called upon to do a lot in those games to the point where some people find it overwhelming. But the mechanics of the game itself just naturally push the story forward. They create story moments. And they give you these inflection points, these interjection points that clearly demand that the GM insert and interpose, if you will, in order to advance the story and make the story more feral, you know? So I appreciate that. Maybe there should be some thoughts on the dynamicism of a game session, how to make a system that makes the GM create an ebb and flow in every session. I mean, that's a very long and complicated topic there for sure. Some GMs are just bad. It's true, they are. Happy birthday, some from Mark. Thank you, Mark. It's fine. Thank you, Ice Car Rider. Well, I'm happy you stopped in. Thank you for joining us. I think a lot of games don't tell GMs how to GM well at all. And the answer is, because most mainstream games, the truth of the matter is the secret to GMing is to cheat in a certain weird way. I don't necessarily mean fudge, but you're cheating. You're ignoring the rules. You're changing the rules. You're skipping over the rules. That is something that is difficult for a rule set itself, to do. And that's why a lot of times they put the stupid rule 0 in and they call it good enough, because I don't know that a rule book can really teach you how to GM, because yeah, I hate rule 0 so much. You're right. I do too. It's pointless. I don't think that GMs are bored, not made. I disagree with that. I think GMs are instructed through play. And I think part of the reason why you don't see good GMing is because the way that people used to learn how to be good GMs was playing a lot and learning from other game masters and seeing what works and what doesn't, what fits their style and what doesn't. And developing their own internalized thought process. Nowadays, people don't want that. They want here's a list, here's an instruction set. Some people get frustrated sometimes. They go with me. They say, Derek, why don't you just tell me specifically the 10 things that I need to do? And I said, because I don't know that list exists. And if I did, I don't think it would even be that helpful for you. The help is in evaluating yourself, your group, your game system, and figuring out what is valuable to you, what is not valuable to you, and what can you use and what can you not use. And are these mechanics pushing you towards outcomes that you want to engage with? And if they are, great. If they're not, then you either need to change them or change the game system or change the game group, but something's got to change. So it's pretty tough in a rules book to say, here's some advice. If this isn't working out, get rid of this game and go buy another one. That's pretty tough. Right, Trajan. You can't parrot. You can't parrot. Trying to parrot someone who GM'd is never going to work. Absolutely. It is an educational process. That, quite frankly, like I said, takes a long time and a lot of effort and constant self-evaluation. We're all getting better. I'm not a good GM. I'm just a GM who's been trying to improve for a long time. So, maybe one day I'll get there. But I'm always trying to get better and try to learn more about what I could do and how do I get to results that matter to me and to my group. Yeah, a lot of skipping the crap. And of course, if you're skipping too much crap, then you get to a what are we even doing here moment. And that's totally fair as well. Yeah, just do a fun only works when you already know what you're doing. There's definitely a certain amount of truth to that as well. And I've said this before, right? I think being a GM is a lot more complicated than just running a game. And I talked about my GM skills. I talked about, conflict management, player expectation management, being like you said, like being a psychologist. There's a lot of spinning plates on the GM. It's tough. I get why it's such a burden for some people. Where's the water? Yeah, we don't have that one. I did drop the ball. I will be completely honest. Absolutely, Crocodile. I mean, I tried to say this during my GM series. And I said, I do not want to be a gatekeeper. I don't. But I think that there's a lot of people who GM, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't be GMing, but you know, you need to be comfortable being in a leadership position. You need to be comfortable being in an authoritative position. You know, master is usually a part of those terms. Master of ceremonies, game master, dungeon master. You need to be a leader, you know, at your table. You need to be able to speak. I talked about this. You need to be able to speak clearly. You need to be able to have people understand you. You know, I find these to be fundamental skills for pretty much every RPG game. Now, different groups are going to expect different things outside of that, but I think all GMs need that skill set. And that's not a RPG skill set. That's just called, you know, being, you know, an effective social human. And again, I'm not trying to be gatekeeping, but I understand that that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people don't want to be in charge. Some people don't want to be the center of attention. Some people don't want to be in a leadership position, and that's fine. That person maybe shouldn't be GMing, or they should get more comfortable with it before they do it again. So what's on your slate for the next game you really want to run? Seems to be focusing a lot on Avatar lately. I don't think it would be Avatar. I mean, it depends what we're talking about. Okay, let's imagine I'm in a world where I have some flexibility. I have some extra time. I'm running games for my home game. I'm running games for some patrons. Maybe we're playing, you know, every other week, or maybe we're playing once every 3 weeks, or maybe even once a month. You know, what are the games that I would want to get on the docket? One of them absolutely is Avatar. I think it's a great system, and I love the world of Avatar, and I think it's got some great storytelling potential. There's a lot of fun stories there to be told, and getting to see how these players will take these challenges in the context of their characters' internalized challenges, and how they will, what will become of that is definitely worth the price of admission for me. So that is definitely high on my list. My love for Legend of the Five Rings never went away. The game does have some awkward parts that aren't really done well, and so part of my hesitation to want to run Legend of the Five Rings is that there's a lot I want to change. There's a lot of people, that's not just me. There's a lot of people who feel like the game was a little underbaked. It came out of Fantasy Flight Games at a time when they were kind of starting to shut down their RPG division. It wasn't getting as much focus and attention, yada, yada, yada. I think the game definitely could be edited better, for sure. But I also think that the game, there's a couple of areas and ideas and systems that are underbaked. I wouldn't say that they're bad. None of them are bad, but some of them are underbaked. And I understand this weakness, and so I want to fix them. And it just seems like one of those things where it's like, with the lack of time that I have, do I really want to spend time trying to, you know, create house rule systems and variants for a game that very few people play, and I might not even run. So that has been my hesitation. Would I run it, quote unquote, raw? Yeah, maybe. But there would still be tweaks I'd have to make. And again, I've run two games, two campaigns of it, and I feel like I've got a good sense for what works and what doesn't. I gotta admit, 3E D&D has been wistfully floating around the back of my mind somewhere. I don't know why. It just has been. The Warhammer game seems really interesting. I've never really played a D100 system before. What else? Well, Fabula Ultima. I wouldn't mind running it. I'd like to play it, but I wouldn't mind running it either. Let's see here. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. But yeah, I mean, there's I would even love to get the right group together and actually play Torchbearer, and see what a group could do with it, and see, you know, if they were open to the ideas of Torchbearer. Shout out to the best girl 3E 3.5. Let me do something here really quick. I'm going to go to the whiteboard, I think. We're going to the whiteboard. Hold on. All right, can you guys hear me? Everybody can hear me okay? A little quiet, maybe. How's it now? Good, good, good. All right. Sorry, I'd switch over to my other thing. I want to see. I just want to see, because not everybody knows this, and I just want to see the reaction to this idea of Torchbearer. Okay. But 3E35 is definitely the best girl. You know, she's that high school sweetheart that, the time passed and you went on to college, you got your real job. You met your wife, you understand that from all practical purposes, this is a more reasonable, person to be your partner, but you never forgot about that high school love, that dream romance. All right. So I want to talk a little bit. I just want to see the group's reaction to this. Oops, I forgot to. There we go. Okay. So in the Bearer of Torches, in Torchbearer. Okay, so we're talking about Torchbearer here, and this is way too thick. Okay. So in Torchbearer, your character does not have hit points. All right. Instead, you have conditions. And I'm just trying to, rather than write them, I'm just going to see if I can cheat and copy them. Here we go. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Okay. Now, these, spacebar. There we go. Okay, so these are the conditions in Torchbearer. All right, when the game, can I lock it? There we go. Cool. When the game starts and you leave town, your character is fresh. So you actually get a bonus. You get to add extra die to all of your die pools, to all tests, until you get any other condition. So if you do get a condition at some point, then you lose that and you get your new condition. Okay. Now, you can see here that you have this list of conditions: fresh, hungry, thirsty, angry, afraid, exhausted, injured, sick, and dead. Dead is actually a condition. All right. And you, when you fail a test, or when you do something, that doesn't go your way or whatever, if you fail something, as a consequence for that failure, you can gain one of these conditions. And obviously, if a condition is marked, I think you have to take a different one. Maybe I can't exactly remember, but there is something that exists inside Torchbearer, okay, and it is called the grind. Okay, and what happens in Torchbearer is when you go into a dungeon. All right, the game is called Torchbearer, so it focuses on dungeon. You get one turn, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, and then the grind happens. And then you get another 4 turns, and then the grind happens. Okay? And so on and so forth. Now, what is the grind? Well, the grind is the first time it grinds. There's a specific list in the book. It doesn't necessarily go in this order, by the way. But if after 4 turns have passed in the dungeon, okay, your character becomes hungry and thirsty. By the way, when that happens, you lose your fresh. And you can only regain fresh in town. So once you've lost fresh, even if you drink something or eat something, and to get rid of your hungry and thirsty, you cannot get back fresh. Now, I'm recalling this from memory, but if the grind occurs again, and your character is hungry and thirsty, then your character becomes, I think, angry. And then if the grind occurs again, your character becomes, I think, like exhausted and then sick and then injured. And actually the last one that you take is afraid, which I think is really great. And then lastly, dead. So literally, if you spend too long in the dungeon, you'll die. Now, here's what's crazy about it. This is what blows people. So already that's pretty crazy for a lot of people. But here's the other thing that's crazy about this in this game. How long is a turn? Is a turn 10 minutes? Is a turn 30 minutes? Is a turn an hour? No, it's not. A turn is when someone makes a check. Not each person. Not everybody gets one check in 10 minutes and that's a turn. No. If the group makes a check, even if one person makes a check, that's a turn. So, case in point, the group enters into an ancient temple, and they enter into a large ceremonial chamber. And one of the characters goes and wants to read the runes that are inscribed on the temple wall. And another character is going to look at the altar and wants to disarm the trap that is very obviously there. And yet a third character, wants to try to bash down a door. So you're like, okay, so that's what everybody's doing this turn. No, that's not how it works. The first person would make their check, and that's a turn. And then the second person would make a check, and that's a turn. And then the third person would make a check, and that's a turn. So this group has used 3 turns in the dungeon, and they are now just 1 turn away from the grind. That makes no sense. You're absolutely right. It doesn't make any sense. But what it does is it's because, and here's why. Because the thing about Torchbearer is you can't think about your character as an individual. It is the party taking these actions. It is the party that is sort of engaging with the dungeon environment. But this is what's really interesting about the game. It has this idea that they call it's literally called the good idea rule. Okay? And this is literally a mechanic that is designed to reward players for good ideas. You ever play D&D and somebody goes to do something? I'll give you an example. This is actually from the AD&D 2nd edition introductory box set. A bunch of new players who've never played D&D before, and we get to listen in on their exciting things. Marketing. It was a CD that came in the book, or the box set. I think I've played it before on the stream sometime. Anyways, new players, they enter into a thing. There's a big shaft at the top of this temple. And at the bottom, they can see they're full of water and man-eating alligators. But somewhat down this shaft, about 30 or 40 feet down, there is an entryway or some sort of shaft that's horizontal. So the first character says, I'm going to climb down. And they climb down and they don't have any problems. And then the second character says, I'm going to climb down. And, they fail their roll. And the GM says, oh, you're going to slip and you're going to fall and you're falling. Does anybody? And then the first person who climbed down says, I reach out and grab them, and he has them make a check and they succeed. And they're like, oh, that was close, Then the third person says, okay, I don't want to fall. I'm going to tie my rope to that nearby pillar, and then I'm going to climb down as well. And he falls, and everyone's like, ah. And he goes, okay, well, you fall, but the rope stops you. And you're kind of dangling outside of the entrance. And the other player goes, that's not fair, like why they didn't have to make a roll to see if they were going to die. And the GM goes, they had a better idea than you did. So get good, noob. Anyways, so in Torchbearer, there is, and I'm actually it might be beneficial for me to literally just find the exact thing here. So I'm going to copy this here, and we're going to take a look at it. All right. The good idea. While adventuring, your players will often encounter hazards that require inventive or even desperate measures to overcome. They must use their gear creatively, puzzle out a clever plan, and act as a team. If you think the players have come up with a good idea, a smart use of their gear, spells, or even their bodies, then there is no need to roll the dice for a test, no need to spend a check, and it doesn't cost a turn. Simply say to them, "That's a good idea," then describe the effect of their action. It could be as simple as, "Yep, you hide," or, "So you want to set up a trap by placing this bucket over the arch and using the rope as a tripwire? Got it." If there's disagreement about your interpretation, discuss this idea a bit until you reach an understanding. If you still think it's a good idea, proceed. If you think the idea is risky or a bit mad, perhaps it's time to call for a test. If the action would merit a twist or a condition, but the description from the players is a good one, you should describe the outcome of the action and move on. A good idea should definitely change the situation. Use the good idea rule to set up big moments. Bypass the minutia. Focus on what's happening or what's important. Highlight exciting actions. Starts to sound like what Vin was talking about, doesn't it? And they give Luke Crane likes to give a lot of examples from play. This actually is like goes right there. I just think. All right. If the players have a great plan for an ambush in the fern forest, but need to cover themselves with fern fronds first, don't make them test scavenger. Tell them it's a good idea. Describe their actions, then cut to the scout test for the ambush. Although in this case, they don't get the +1 die for supplies because they don't actually gather them. In order to get the bonus, mechanical bonus, you have to do the mechanical thing. In this game, skills are very broad and the condition rules are very punishing. If you focus too closely on the fine-grained details, you'll crush the players. So what does this mean? It means that this game, if your players literally rely on the mechanics, if your players literally rely on rolling dice. Hey, Boothby.
Boothby tipped $10. Happy birthday. On the subject of GM skills, some of my players have said I've gotten a lot better the past couple of years. I credit Colk Streams, Discord, and community games for it.
That's
and a
excellent.
dash of Critical Role and Glass Cannon.
I mean, yeah, Critical Role, Glass Cannon are great sources as well. But I mean, Boothby, I think you've come a long way. I mean, you're running games that I not necessarily you specifically, but I mean, I don't think you would have ever imagined that you'd be running some of the games that you're running now, just even a couple years ago. So I think that's awesome. But thank you for the tip and thank you for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. And then I'm glad you've gotten so much value out of this. I know we've gotten a lot of having you part of our community. A lot of people have played a lot of games because of Boothby. So thank you. So what I was saying is if your players literally rely on their character sheets, okay, again and again and again and again and again, okay, if we go to the character sheet, okay, here's our character sheet. We got skills. We've got alchemist, arcanist, cook, commander, cook, scholar, scout, survivalist, manipulate, hunter, healer, pathfinder, persuader, rider. If your players are making a lot of checks, okay, then they are also taking up a lot of turns. And that means that the game will literally eventually kill them. So in order for your players, this is like a Torchbearer, somebody said up above, I don't remember who said it, but they said, I think it's really funny that the order in which the grind occurs does not occur in the order that the conditions are listed. And some people don't like this, but the thing is part of this game is learning how to play it. Okay. It's learning how to get good at it. And, there's this idea that some people don't feel like they should have to, sort of get, learn how the game works. So here we go. Actually, we've got it here. The rules for it. I found them. All right. The grind. Every fourth turn during the adventuring phase, all characters earn a condition. If your character has no other conditions, you suffer hungry and thirsty. If you're already hungry and thirsty, you become exhausted. If you're already exhausted and hungry, take angry. If you're angry, exhausted, and hungry, you become sick. If you're angry, exhausted, hungry, and sick, you're injured.
Finally, you're afraid, and if those 6 conditions are checked on the 4th turn, your character dies. You unceremoniously drop dead from exhaustion. Note that these conditions are imposed in a different order than on the character sheet to better reflect the grind of this kind of life and to keep you on your toes. And it's that last line that's so important. This is a game that wants your players to go like, I've been playing this game for a while. There's stuff in this rule book that is kind of deliberately, it's not hidden, but it's not obvious. It's one of those things where it's like you have to play the game in order to sort of understanding it. Okay, so the game punishes the players for playing the game. Yes. Karma? Yes, it does. And my point is if your players want to have any chance of not getting ground into dust, okay, they are going to have to either be really, really strategic and really, really precise about what they spend their turns on, but also they're going to have to use a lot of good ideas, because good ideas where the characters engage with the fiction, where the characters engage with the situation, the narrative, the simulation, where the characters engage with their gear or, elements of their character sheet, the stuff they brought, weapons, the environment. When they come up with a good idea, that allows them to make the game move forward, but it doesn't require a check. And because it doesn't require a check, it doesn't require a turn. And this may seem ancillary, but it's not. It's actually critical to the way that this game functions. A bad group, okay, of play, and this game is punishing. It's obviously designed by Luke Crane, and I don't blame anybody from playing it and saying this was horrible, I never want to play it again. But if a group of new players comes into this game, I'm not saying it's like Dark Souls, but I'm also saying it's not Dark Souls. It's the Dark Souls of dungeon exploration, okay, rather than combat. Because if a normal group of D&D players were to come and play this game, they might burn through. They're used to making checks for everything, and everybody makes a check in a room. You make a check, I make a check, you make a check, you make a check, and the GM says, "Okay, you make a check, and this happens. You make a check, this happens. And they're just tracking turn, 4th turn, and then they go, "Okay, everybody's hungry and thirsty." And the players go, "Oh, damn, well, we lost fresh. Okay, well, we have rations, so we'll eat those. Okay, so, but we're still in this room, so we're going to do this. Okay, great. Everybody does those things. All right, grind again. Everybody's hungry and thirsty. And everyone's like, all right, I'll eat another ration." And then it's like, very quickly you start going, well, we didn't bring that many rations. They actually, encumbrance is kind of a pain in the ass in this game. I didn't think we'd need them. And it's like, well, you're spending a lot of time here and you're taking a lot of turns. And then that group is just going to get chewed up by the dungeon. They're never going to be able to get anywhere because they're going to keep getting hungry and thirsty. They're going to have to burn through all of their supplies before they start, getting worse conditions. But if a group learns from that and they figure out, okay, well, if instead of us all taking an action, we just focus on one action, or we really get to the important check, or we try to avoid checks entirely and just come up with these good ideas, then maybe that's a better way to get through certain circumstances. So it's an interesting idea, but here's the key thing, though. I cannot stress this enough. There will still be times where you have to rely on your mechanics. And this game uses diegetic character progression, okay? If we go back to our character sheet, this is your character skill ranking, okay? So if my alchemist rating, let's say, was... there we go. Okay, if this is my alchemist rating, then locking. That means if my alchemist rating is 3, it means I roll 3 dice when I make an alchemist check, which is good. And by the way, I'm trying to get 4, 5s, and 6s are successes on a d6. So I'm rolling 3 dice. Every time I make it, there's no experience points per se. I mean, in a certain sense for skills. Every time I make an alchemist check, if I succeed, if I pass the check, I mark one of these boxes. If I fail the check, I mark one of these boxes. Once you have a number of passes equal to your current rank plus 1, and once you have a number of failures equal to your current rating, the skill automatically goes up. So if my character was like, if I had passed a bunch of checks, okay, I'm more than, I don't even have to track this many, technically. Once I get to this 4, I'm good. But I need to fail twice. In order for my skill to go up, my character has to fail. Now, if I'm always doing good ideas and I'm always bypassing the mechanics of the game, that's great. That's a skill and you've used it well. But this game also rewards you for knowing how to play the mechanics of the game. Because this sets up a scenario where your character wants to fail, needs to fail. And the idea is that, you know, you learn from success, but you also learn from adversity. If you're only trying easy things, then you're never going to get better. You gotta challenge yourself. You gotta push your limits. And so this sets up a scenario where my character may actually want to use the mechanics of the game in order to give themselves a lessened chance to actually succeed at a check, because they want to earn the failure. And then once my character earned the 3rd failure, we would then come in, we would erase all these check boxes, and then the 4 would become, or the 3 would become a 4. And that's how skills work in Torchbearer. But you don't get those for good ideas. You get those for making checks. So there's a strategy. The thing that we think about as being part of this, like this kind of this philosophy of art, you know, of OSR, rulings versus rules. A good player doesn't have to make a roll. They're just always bullshitting their GM and coming up with great stuff. This is a game that actually makes rulings versus rules like a tactical challenge in balancing the two of them and figuring out, you know, when to hold them and when to fold them. You know, when should you try to go around the rules? When should you engage with them? When do you need to engage with them? It actually makes a game out of the game. It's a meta game on top of the game. It's very, very weird and very, very intricate. And not everybody gets this. And when they play it the first time, they hate it, and rightfully so, because the game is challenging you to learn it and figure it out. And there's an element to this game that isn't, again, it's kind of opaque. It doesn't necessarily, you know, make a whole lot of sense in that respect. Yeah, that's Torchbearer. Let's see here. Vin says I should just tell my players to get good more often. I wonder how early he said this. I like this rule a bunch. It's something that a lot of us kind of do as part of the DC setting process, or even by allowing automatic success. If my players come up with a great idea in Pathfinder 2, I often legitimately change the DC of what they're doing, i.e. I use circumstance bonus and DC setting rules. But Urbane Bluff is, it seems like they're putting the OSR philosophy into a very concrete mechanical system to encourage that type of play. Yes, that is, they're making the absence of rules part of the game. Does that make sense? They're making the part where people go, we're going outside the game because we're better than the game, and we're going to pull a fast one on the game by ignoring it, by going around it, by coming up with a good idea. And they instead made that part of the game. So it's like they next leveled you, right? So I think it's really interesting. The winning move is not to play. That is also definitely the case. You know, in some cases. Have you looked at Trophy Dark? It's been recommended to me, but I have not taken a look at it. No, I have not. Great. Look at that. Urbane Blobfish, and that's a great icon for your for your name. If anybody knows what a blobfish looks like when they're up on the surface. That's pretty good. All right. Well, you know, this birthday stream was just kind of a hangout moment, chance for me to kind of talk about a bunch of stuff and kind of you know, celebrate the channel a little bit, and you know, talk about how, you know, life takes some unexpected turns. Obviously, I've had a crazy summer. A lot of fun stuff, but stressful stuff, and then a lot of not fun stuff that was also very stressful. And so, you know, I've been having some, you know, health issues and seeing a bunch of doctors and trying to get my mind right and trying to get my body right and, trying to do the best I can. But, RPGs have always been, maybe honestly, maybe the reason why I'm, stressed out, over anxious has nothing to do with the fire and the dog surgery and the power outage and the running around to all these different conventions. And no, maybe it has to do with the fact that I didn't get a chance to play a lot of RPGs this year. It's a fun way for me to relax. It's a fun way for me to kick back. And, it is the case that the channel makes RPGs a little bit more of my job, a little bit more of my business. Years for us, years of playing the actual plays, I will admit, kind of sullied. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of sullies the game a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Once the game is rolling, and we're not focused on the cameras and the chat. If you watch like the Root games and the Rise of Room games, we usually very quickly get to a point where it's like we're just playing. But everything else around it, setting up the studio and the cameras and the lights and everyone's mics, and it just introduces this extra level to the game, and it makes the game so much more demanding than it needs to be. And so a lot of the gaming that we've done on the channel and other stuff like that, definitely has kind of changed my mindset around the game, about games in general. So, there's this idea of like, well, even people. I give ourselves credit for this. We've always kept our Friday night game untelevised, unrecorded, unstreamed. But we've always had patrons and folks who have said, "Oh, I'd love to see your Friday night games. It'd be awesome if you could put a camera on. It doesn't even have to be good audio. Just like one camera up in the corner. It'd be so cool to see you guys playing in your home spot." And I totally get that. But it is I think really important for me to have these sort of not on air type games. Thank you, Crocodile Appreciator. When is Chubo Stream 2 happening? I don't know if I could make that happen. Again, it wasn't bad. It was just mind-boggling. It was too much. It was too much. It was like drinking from the fire hose. So I do agree. I do need to play more games. So that's definitely going to be a goal for me, as we kind of wrap up this year and move into 2025, and hopefully I can figure out a way to make that happen. Because it's important. Games are important. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? All right. Well, it's my birthday. I've got some ice cream downstairs that I want to have as my only treat. I literally went to the doctor's today. I did some work this morning. I went to the doctor's this afternoon. I took a nap before this stream, and that's it. So that was my birthday. And hung out with you folks. So it's great. I got a bunch of text messages from my parents and friends and stuff and family. So pretty uneventful birthday, but that's okay. We accept that. Thank you everybody for coming out, for supporting me, supporting the channel. It means a lot to me. And I really look forward to, continuing to share games with you all. I'd love to get some more games played with my patrons. I'd love to get some of our old favorites back on the channel and get them back on the stream and play games with everybody and get to share that fun that we have. Because I'll be clear, my actual plays that I've done on this channel have never been about, creating a compelling, dramatic story that other people would want to watch. Let me be very clear about that. I don't do that at all, ever. I've said many times on this channel that I run games and I create games and play them for us, for the people who are at that table. What I hope is that we're having a blast and we're having a ball, and that people who watch us, one, just get to enjoy some of the fun that we're having, even if the story itself is terrible and full of plot holes. Two, they get to enjoy those really great, cool mechanical moments that come with the kind of games that we're talking about. Everyone loves a good critical hit at the right time. Doesn't matter if the story is lame or not. A crit's a crit. And then three, I do try to take time to explain to my players, to my audience, what is going on mechanically in the game, and especially with some of these game systems, I really want to highlight what is going on and how these mechanics change the play experience. And different game systems are different, and they create and reward different play patterns. And so hopefully you learn something about whether you'd want to play this game or maybe a different way to play this game. And so, we've never gone for like the compelling television arc. We've always gone for the, let's just have fun. And so, even we've had patrons on for some of our shows, for some of our holiday guests. Vin's been a guest on our show a couple of times. He came on for Dread in the Dark and Dragons. He came on for Leshies. He came on for Poppets. And it's always been fun to have Donnie and Damien and a bunch of other folks on the channel as well. So, people have fun with those. We have fun with those because we're having fun with those. Is it a good story? No. Like, would our Root actual play make like a good like novelization? No. It was chaos and nonsense and rightfully so. I didn't pre-plan that, right? Most good authors will tell you that you do need to have somewhat of a plan in order for things to make sense. And so what you're putting down in step one, if you want to have that sort of novelization, you kind of have to know where your story is going. I didn't, and I don't. And so, of course, it feels disjointed and chaotic because it is disjointed and it is chaotic, Hey! Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott P. Happy birthday. Hope you buy some new games. We will see soon on the channel. Scott, yes. Scott, the one thing that we've continued to do that has been very popular has been first looks, doing deep dives in some of my favorite games, looking at new games. And some of the new games that Scott, to be honest with you, some of the new games I've looked at have fucked me up because I'm like, oh man, there's too many games that I want to play. So that will be put to very good use. Thank you for the birthday super chat. That is extremely gracious of you. And it will definitely be going to buying some new RPGs because again, in the era, I love to have physical books, obviously. I love to have physical books, but PDFs make it very convenient and it's really great because I get to share it with you all. So there's a strong incentive for me, so I can take, $50 and I can turn that into 3 or 4 games that I can buy for the channel that I can look at, that you can look at, that we can all learn from. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Scott. The dice never lie is a favorite expression my group has, as the dice often roll what we know is the appropriate result. I like dice because they introduce randomness into our outcomes. And I enjoy a certain amount of randomness in my outcomes because it keeps me on my toes. I got to keep jumping around and figuring out what's going to happen next. I enjoy that as a game master. I like not knowing. I like that kind of like, maybe not right now because I've been having panic attacks and anxiety disorder, but I like being in that kind of like, I don't know what's going to come. I got to be ready for anything. So that's what makes GMing fun for me. And then getting to play off of these players and just taking their wild, crazy, stupid, awesome ideas and running with them, and before you know it, we've just spiraled out of control and we've created this crazy scenario. And I love it. It's one of my favorite things. See, Bob doesn't understand that, like, when we were playing Rise of the Rune Lords, the adventure is written that the players are going to go through the gate that is open. And I set up the map because it's for TV, for the show, for the stream, that they were going to go through that gate. And of course they didn't go through that gate. They went through the barred gate, the gate that was full of debris. And Bob had to sneak in as a dwarf alchemist and try to blow this up. All right. All this nonsense. And Bob kind of thought like, and I was kind of grumbling about it because again, you got to kind of ham it up a little bit as a GM. Sometimes let your players know that, you're frustrating them. But Bob doesn't, and Bob was like, oh yeah, I fucked that up. And I was like, no, Bob, that's exactly why we play RPGs. That's the entire reason that I want to play an RPG is I want someone to not go through the main gate and then go through the back door. I can't even tell you, like my group, even recently in Forbidden Lands, there was this ancient ruined temple and it was surrounded by this stone wall and the group kind of snuck in. Smith used a druid sight spell to sort of cast his vision into a bird of prey above. And you could see that outside the temple was this sort of like hovel village of like penitent worshipers, but there was some sort of priest cult that lived inside of the temple. And they were like, well, we're not going in that way. They're like, all right, we look around. And then, they found this like old secret tunnel that like far off, and they snuck in through the back, and then they crept into the bottom of the snake pit, and they entered this dungeon literally like from the bottom level instead of the front entrance. They just basically did the entire dungeon backwards. They actually snuck in, stole the ruby that the snake was guarding, and then got out. They fought like 2 lizard men, and they didn't fight any of the other cultists, and then they ran away. It was complete disaster, right? but it was awesome. It was dumb. It was stupid. It was crazy. It was nonsense, but it was our crazy, dumb nonsense. And that's what made it so fun. And that's what made it so memorable. When are we going to see Hatchethoff again? Frosty, Quest for the Frozen Flames. Hatchethoff is more likely to return than Quest for the Frozen Flames. I'll put it that way. But dumb ideas might be more important than good ideas. Yeah. I mean, in a way, Trajan, it kind of is. And I really appreciate it when people, you know, when they put their mark on the game, that's what I really love. Thank you, Din. Appreciate it. So real quick, I want to say thank you to Blood Ernest for the tip. He couldn't catch the stream, but he hopes we have fun hanging out. So Blood Ernest, if you're watching this on the VOD, thank you so much for that tip at the beginning of the stream before we even started. We got a $24 tip from Mike for 24 for my 24th. Thank you. 24 on 24. Thank you. We got super chat from Torin wishing us happy birthday and thanking us for the archive of VODs. Happy birthday from Lollipop with a $26 tip. Real growth of the friends we made along the way. Thank you. Karama, $25. Appreciated us and continuing making a super chat while running multiple games of the arena in our Southern Beaches campaign, which, by the way, you should check out if you're interested in playing a lot of Pathfinder 2 with a bunch of crazy, cool ideas and people who are loving to make stuff up and take your ideas and run with them. It's an awesome group and fantastic. $50 tip from GM Scott, who wanted me to pick up a shiny new RPG as he is off to run his Tuesday games. 43 from Erica, who wasn't in the stream but wanted to give us one for good luck and another good year. Self-confessed cynic, shouting out the best girl, our favorite girl, 3E/3.5. Although I still do have to give the nod to 3E. $10 tip from Boothby on appreciating the GM skills that he has gained as a result of this channel. And lastly, a $50 super chat from Scott P, who is eager to see the new RPGs that I'll be bringing onto the channel. So thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me on my birthday. You all are a fantastic audience and a great group of people in general, and I appreciate each and every single one of you. So with that, I bid you a fond farewell and good night, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.